What stereo widener do you use whilst mixing? Now, there's two ways for me of widening sound with just, let's say, one plugin. You've got using a stereo imager, stereo widener, or using mid-side EQ. Now, there's these two ways are very different. So a stereo widener will be it will be global across the whole of that frequency range. Whereas mid-side EQ, using the sides, we can precisely increase the sides of certain frequencies that we want to increase the width on. So we can really tailor a stereo image using mid-side EQ. So the two that I will use a lot for mid-side EQ for stereo widening is I'll use the FabFilter Pro Q3, and that's really good in mid-side. For your more precision, I find that's more for my precision widening. Or I will use the Elysia Muse EQ, and you can flip that into mid-side, but that one is very good because I find with the Muse EQ that it has a really kind of nice Q. It has like quite a broad Q, and it has a round sound. So when using the widener, when using mid-side and just on the sides, turning up exactly the frequency range that you want, I find you get a really kind of nice pleasing sound from the Elysia Muse EQ, and that's why I use that. If I'm using a stereo widener, which I generally have a stereo widener on the majority of buses, because I do like to just give it a little bit of added width in certain places, I will use the SSL Fusion stereo imager, and that's a really good one, albeit very expensive. I think it's about £129, which is very expensive for a stereo widening plugin, but it is a very good one. And when I compared, before getting that, when I compared everything, all the different stereo wideners, the Fusion did actually sound the most pleasing of all the different stereo wideners. I'm used to using the stereo imager on the Fusion because I have one in both of my mastering studios, and I do love the stereo image that can be achieved using the Fusion. So taking that into the box, it's very similar. The good thing about the stereo imager on the Fusion is you've got two basic parameters. You've got space and then you've got width. Width being, it will bring out the width. Width is brilliant. Go around, I think it's about 2 plus 2. You get a really sweet sound in there. Any further I find it may be a bit too much, but it's obviously it's dependable on the actual sound and how much needs to be widened. But what's great about the Fusion plugin, the stereo imager plugin, is you have space. Now space gives you a wider low end. Now as soon as you say wider low end, you're maybe thinking, well, why would you widen the low end? We spend so much time ensuring that the low end is in mono. Yes, you could put a mono maker, for instance, further down the chain, so that once you've done this widening, turn it mono. The space has, you have, with the plugin, you have an adjustment for the frequency range. And that's very good, and the Fusion hardware doesn't have that. So that's great, and that's called shuffle. It's a shuffle parameter. You turn that up, basically the range of the low end widening becomes greater. Turn it down and it goes down to the lower range. The space control isn't going to be used on everything, but it does achieve a certain sound that gives you a lovely low end width. But it's not like using some of these other wideners where if you widen the low end, you would have this kind of horrible kind of wide bass. It's not like that. It's very, very unique. And of all the wideners that we own, the SSL Fusion is probably the best, because it doesn't it doesn't take the sound and just kind of, some wideners destroy the sound. Some wideners just kind of put things out of phase and pull the mono signal out wide, and it's just like, whoa, it doesn't, it's good as an effect, but it's not good from a mixing sense. You wouldn't use it over everything as just like, right, okay, I've got these strings and I want to just make them a little bit wider. Brilliant. That's what the SSL Fusion stereo widener will do. That's why I love using it. Another one that is good, and it is free, and it is, if you're on a budget and you don't want to, like majority of people don't want to go out and spend £129 on a stereo widener. We do, because we run a business where we want to be using the best tools. So we will use that, but I can totally understand why someone who isn't working as a business and as a kind of a hobbyist, you don't want to go out and spend £129 on a stereo widener, because it's mad amounts of money for a stereo widener. The one to get in that case is the iZotope stereo imager. Now that is really good, and that's a good plugin, and that is free, and it is a basic stereo widener that will rival the SSL stereo widener, but it's free. So go download that, because I mean, if you need a stereo widener, that is certainly one to get. And I don't use it. I've got it installed because I think it's a brilliant plugin. I don't necessarily use it because I have the SSL stereo widener. But believe me, if I didn't have that, I would use that. And I'd probably, do you know what? And this might sound stupid, but if the iZotope stereo widener was priced at £129, exactly as the the SSL one is, I would probably use the iZotope one as much as I use the SSL one. It is a factor of that it's a free plugin that means that it doesn't get a look in against something that cost £129. And that maybe is a bad way to look at it, because you should be using a tool that is the best for the job. I find that the SSL one is best for the job, but the iZotope one is more than adequate. It's a brilliant widener, and it should be used. So yeah, if you want to spend £129 on a widener, the SSL Fusion stereo widener is brilliant, and that's the one that I use, and that's the one I'd recommend. If you just want a free widener that is really good, get yourself the iZotope stereo imager 2, I think it's called.